My sister was sent to boarding school for reporting our brother doing things to us, while I called her a liar. When she came back and saved me from him, I finally saw the truth. Now our parents are getting out of prison early and coming for us. I was 14 when my little sister was sent away for false allegations against our older brother Chad. She had always been a little loopy, the type to exaggerate things for attention, so I figured that the boarding school would set her straight, and I was right. Because when Lily came home a year later, she was a shell of her former self, lost a lot of weight, only spoke when spoken to, barely smiled anymore. At the time, I was convinced she deserved it. After all, she had disgraced the family name and caused nothing but mayhem for no reason. But apparently she was still her ungrateful self, because when Mom made her favorite lasagna, she didn't even say thank you, just pushed it around the plate with her fork. And when Chad reached across the table for the salt, Lily actually flinched. I rolled my eyes and wondered when her exaggeration phase would finally end. Chad caught my reaction and laughed. Guess boarding school didn't completely fix her lying problem. Me and my parents snorted in agreement. Over the next few weeks, I tried to be friendly with her while keeping my distance, especially since during movie nights, she'd always wedge herself between me and Chad on the couch. It was like she refused to let me be alone with him without her supervision. Stop being so weird, I'd hiss at her. She'd just give me this sad look I couldn't understand. One evening, I could hear Chad following me upstairs after announcing I was going to bed. I saw him smirking, and that's when I knew he was coming to collect his good night hug, the one where he wrapped his greedy arms around me and grabbed my curves. But instead of telling him to leave me alone, I just shrugged it off. You see, I had successfully gaslit myself into believing that Chad wasn't so bad. So much so that his assault became a part of my daily life. But Lily didn't have that problem. As soon as she noticed what was going on, she accidentally flung herself down the stairs, begging me to help with her injuries. But I knew exactly what she was doing. So as soon as we were alone, I screamed at her. Why can't you just accept that boys will be boys? Even Mom and Dad say it's not a big deal. She broke out into tears, and I just rolled my eyes. Now Chad is going to be all hot and bothered, so when I go upstairs, he's going to be even more violent. I then proceeded to walk upstairs and lie completely still on my bed while Chad took what he wanted from my motionless self. But Lily still wouldn't leave me alone. And the next morning, when the house was empty, she cornered me in my room. Sarah, before I left for boarding school, Chad, she could barely finish her sentences in between her sobs. His hands, they were inside me. I just laughed. Chad has been stealing my innocence ever since I was 9. This is just what brothers do in the real world. Grow the F up, Lily. Even Mom and Dad ignore it, because it's not that big of a deal. Lily's eyes widened so hard I thought her face might split. I continued. You didn't need to go around complaining to everyone about it. You're lucky Mom and Dad sent you to a boarding school instead of somewhere worse. Lily proceeded to try and argue about why it wasn't okay, but at the time I was brainwashed, so her words fell on deaf ears. But Lily, wonderful Lily, never gave up. I was watching Netflix at 1 a.m. when she texted asking me to come into her room. I asked if it was about Chad, and she said no. Said it was about a boy at school. When I walked in, her face was puffy from crying. A boy at school cornered me in an empty classroom today, she said quietly. He pushed me against the wall and put his hand up my shirt, kept telling me to be quiet or he'd make things worse. Then he made me touch him through his pants while he pressed against me. My vision went red. We're telling Mom and Dad right now. We're calling the police. I'll unalive him myself if I have to. That's when she said something that made my stomach churn. I made it up, she said softly. That's exactly what Chad does to you every week, word for word. So why is it only wrong when a stranger does it? The room tilted. My legs felt weak. It was the first time that I felt like Chad had done something wrong. I didn't say anything, just walked out. I stayed home from school the next day, lying in my bed trying to process everything. And that night, I heard Chad's footsteps approach my room, but instead of unclothing myself and letting him abuse me, I resisted. I told him what he was doing was wrong, that he was a 25-year-old man and couldn't keep doing this. In response, he picked me up and flung me across the room. Suddenly, the door burst open. It was my parents. I expected them to protect me, or at least ask if I was okay. But no. My dad grabbed my wrists and screamed in my face. Why are you provoking him? You know how boys are. Mom dragged Lily from her room. They screamed at her for corrupting me and threatened to send her somewhere worse than boarding school. Chad just stood there smirking. That's when I saw the familiar flash of red and blue. Lily had called the police. The officers separated us immediately. One took me and Lily to the ambulance, while 2 others approached Chad and my parents. I could hear Mom shrieking about false accusations as they led her to a patrol car. Dad kept insisting we were troubled girls who made things up for attention. The paramedic examined the bruise forming on my shoulder where I'd hit the wall. She took photos and asked gentle questions while Lily held my hand. Her grip was steady, stronger than I'd ever felt it before. When they asked about previous injuries, I found myself telling them everything. The words just spilled out. 6 years of silence breaking like a dam. They took us to the station in separate cars from our parents and Chad. The detective who interviewed me was patient, writing down dates and details I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten they existed. Lily was in another room giving her own statement. I learned later she'd been planning this for weeks, gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment. Child Protective Services arrived within hours. The social worker, a woman named Rachel who happened to be Mom's estranged sister, sat with us in a small conference room. She hadn't seen us in years because Mom had cut her off for being too nosy about our home life. Now I understood why. You're safe now, Rachel kept repeating. You're coming home with me. The drive to Rachel's house took 40 minutes. She lived in a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood. The guest room had 2 beds already made up. Later, she admitted she'd been preparing for this day since Lily had managed to call her from boarding school months ago. We'd been there 3 days when Rachel got the call. Chad had posted bail. My stomach dropped, but Rachel immediately started making phone calls. By evening, we had a restraining order, though paper didn't feel like much protection. The next weeks blurred together. Our parents hired the most expensive lawyer in town and started their campaign. They told everyone who would listen that we were mentally unstable, that Rachel had poisoned us against them. They showed up at Rachel's work, at the grocery store, always careful to stay just outside the restraining order's distance. The custody hearing was a nightmare. Our parents' lawyer presented thick folders of evidence, falsified therapy records suggesting we both had histories of pathological lying, letters from family friends vouching for their character. I recognized some of the signatures as forgeries, but proving it seemed impossible. Rachel fought back quietly. She'd been recording their threatening phone calls, documenting every violation. When the judge ordered family therapy sessions, we thought it might help. Then we saw Chad's car in the parking lot during our first appointment. He never came inside, just sat there watching, making sure we knew he was there. I started having panic attacks. They'd hit without warning, in the shower, during dinner, in the middle of the night. Lily withdrew again, that boarding school shell creeping back. Rachel installed security cameras after finding our car tires slashed one morning. The police said without proof it was Chad, they couldn't do anything. Our parents convinced aunts, uncles, and cousins to write character letters. People who'd known us our whole lives suddenly claimed we were troubled liars who'd always caused problems. The betrayal stung almost as much as everything else. One afternoon while Rachel was at work, I found myself in my old room's virtual tour on the real estate website. Our parents were already trying to sell the house. That's when I noticed something in the photos. My old laptop was still on the desk. The laptop Chad had given me for my 13th birthday. The laptop he'd insisted on setting up for me. My hands shook as I told Rachel. She called her neighbor, a retired detective named Benjamin who'd been following our case. He understood immediately. If he had access to your devices, he might have been monitoring you. But when the police finally got a warrant to search Chad's computer, the files had vanished. Our parents' lawyer claimed we were making up more lies, that we'd planted the idea to frame Chad. The judge warned Rachel about coaching us. Everything felt hopeless until Lily remembered her teddy bear. She'd brought it to boarding school and hidden her diary inside before coming home. She'd documented everything. Dates, times, specific incidents that matched my experiences perfectly. Benjamin helped us properly catalog it all and connected us with a victim's advocate who actually listened. The trial was brutal. Their lawyer attacked every word we said, trying to trip us up on tiny details. But we held firm. Then came the first surprise. The boarding school administrator testified via video call. Lily had reported the abuse there too, and they'd documented everything. They even had recordings of the threatening calls our parents made to keep them quiet. The defense started crumbling when Chad's ex-girlfriend Sarah walked into the courtroom. None of us knew she existed. She'd filed a police report 2 years ago after Chad assaulted her, but it had been buried after his family made threats. She still had the hospital records. More witnesses came forward. A teacher who'd noticed bruises. A neighbor who'd heard screaming. Each testimony added another crack to our parents' lies. When the verdicts came, I held Lily's hand so tight I thought I might break it. Chad got 15 years. Our parents each got 5 for child endangerment and conspiracy. The courtroom erupted, but I just felt empty. Relief maybe, but mostly just tired. Rachel's adoption paperwork went through 6 months later. We officially became sisters in a different way. Therapy helped, slowly. There were bad days, nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks, but there were good days too. Days when Lily smiled like she used to. Days when I could shower without checking the locks 3 times. I started speaking at survivor support groups. Lily threw herself into psychology studies, determined to help other kids who'd been through what we had. The money from selling our childhood home paid for therapy in college. Years passed. Lily graduated summa fluid laude with her psychology degree. At the ceremony, I gave a speech about the little sister who saved my life by refusing to give up on me even when I couldn't see the truth. The audience gave her a standing ovation, but all I could see was her face. No longer that boarding school shell, but bright and alive and free. We built new lives from the ashes of our old ones. Some scars never fully fade, but we learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about reclaiming your story and choosing how it continues. And our story? It continued with love, with chosen family, with the knowledge that speaking truth to power sometimes means starting with speaking truth to yourself. Lily taught me that. My little sister, who was never too loopy or dramatic or attention-seeking, she was just brave enough to name what was happening when the rest of us couldn't. The months after the trial should have been peaceful, but peace was something our biological parents refused to grant us. They'd been sentenced, yes, but their reach extended far beyond prison walls. It started with letters, handwritten notes that arrived at Rachel's house despite our forwarding address being confidential. The first one came addressed to me in Mom's careful script. Rachel intercepted it, but I insisted on reading it. The words dripped with manipulation, how they'd only wanted what was best for us, how we destroyed our family, how they forgave us for our lies. I tore it up, but more kept coming. Then came the phone calls to Rachel's workplace. Anonymous tips about her unstable nieces, concerns about her fitness as a guardian. Her boss thankfully saw through it, but the harassment was relentless. We changed our phone numbers twice in 3 months. The real escalation began when Dad's brother, Uncle Marcus, started showing up. He'd park across from our school, never approaching, just watching. The restraining order didn't cover extended family, and he was careful to stay on public property. Lily started having nightmares again. I found her sleeping on the floor of my room most nights, too scared to be alone. Rachel tried everything legal. The police said they couldn't do anything without proof of direct threats. Our lawyer filed motions, but the system moved slowly. Meanwhile, our parents' influence spread like poison through our extended family and community. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was walking home from my part-time job at the library when I noticed a familiar car following me. Not Uncle Marcus this time. It was our cousin Bethany, someone I'd once considered a friend. She pulled up beside me, window down. "Sarah, please, just talk to me," she called out. "Your mom is devastated. She just wants to understand why you'd lie about everything." I kept walking, heart pounding. She drove slowly beside me for 3 blocks, pleading, guilt-tripping, her words a twisted echo of Mom's manipulation tactics. When I finally ran into a store to escape, she parked outside and waited. The store manager had to call the police to make her leave. That night, Rachel made a decision. We were moving, not just to another neighborhood, but to another state entirely. She'd been quietly job hunting and had received an offer from a hospital 3 states away. We'd leave in 2 weeks, tell no one, and start fresh. But somehow, they found out. Maybe someone at Rachel's work overheard, or maybe they'd been monitoring us in ways we hadn't discovered. The night before our planned departure, we woke to the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a brick through the living room window. Attached was a note. "You can't run from family." The security cameras showed a figure in dark clothing, face covered. The build looked like Uncle Marcus, but we couldn't prove it. Rachel called the police while Lily and I huddled together in her room. The officers took a report, gathered evidence, but we all knew nothing would come of it. We left that night instead of waiting until morning, throwing our essential belongings into Rachel's car and driving through the darkness. The new city was supposed to be our fresh start. Rachel had rented a small apartment near her new hospital. We enrolled in school under our new legal names. Rachel had helped us change them as part of the adoption process. For a few weeks, it felt like we could breathe again. But trauma doesn't respect geographic boundaries. I was struggling in my new school, jumping at unexpected noises, unable to focus. Lily had developed selective mutism again, only speaking at home. Rachel was working long shifts to support us, coming home exhausted to find us both struggling. The therapy helped, but progress was slow. Dr. Martinez, our new therapist, specialized in trauma recovery. She taught us grounding techniques, helped us process our experiences, but healing isn't linear. Some days were harder than others. Then the packages started arriving. No return address, always sent to Rachel's workplace. The first contained family photos, pictures of us as children, smiling and seemingly happy. The second held my old diary, the one I thought I'd thrown away years ago. Each entry had been annotated in Mom's handwriting, correcting my memories, explaining why I was wrong about everything. Rachel wanted to go to the police again, but we were tired of being dismissed. Instead, she installed more security measures, new locks, additional cameras, a security system. We varied our routines, never taking the same route twice. It felt like being in witness protection, except we were protecting ourselves. The escalation investigation continued when Lily's school called saying someone had requested her records, claiming to be from her previous school. They'd been suspicious enough to verify, discovering the request was fraudulent. Someone was trying to track us down. I started carrying pepper spray. Lily wouldn't go anywhere alone. Rachel arranged her shifts so someone was always home when we returned from school. We lived in a constant state of vigilance that was exhausting but necessary. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Chad's ex-girlfriend, the other Sarah who'd testified at the trial, reached out through our lawyer. She'd been experiencing similar harassment and had hired a private investigator. What he'd uncovered was disturbing. Our parents had been corresponding with a network of estranged parents groups from prison. These groups coached them on legal loopholes, harassment tactics that skirted the law, and ways to maintain control over their children from behind bars. They'd been sharing our information, crowdsourcing ways to find and intimidate us. The investigator had documented everything: the letter campaigns, the coordination with family members, even evidence that they'd hired someone to follow us to our new city. It was enough to bring federal charges for conspiracy and interstate stalking, but building the case would take time. In the meantime, we had to stay vigilant. Rachel took a leave of absence from work to homeschool us temporarily. We rarely left the apartment, ordering groceries for delivery, living in a self-imposed lockdown. The isolation was suffocating. I missed my friends from our old city, the ones who'd believed and supported us. Lily spent hours drawing, filling sketchbook after sketchbook with dark imagery that worried Rachel. We were safe, but at what cost? One evening, while Rachel was at a mandatory work meeting, someone knocked on our door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a clipboard. She claimed to be from Child Services, said there had been a complaint about our living conditions. Everything about it felt wrong. Real social workers call ahead. They don't show up at 8 p.m. I told her through the door that she'd need to schedule with our guardian. She became insistent, saying she had the authority to remove us if we didn't cooperate. Lily was trembling beside me. I called Rachel, who confirmed no visit was scheduled. Then I called 911. The woman fled before police arrived, but the security camera caught her face clearly. The investigator later identified her as a member of one of those estranged parents groups, someone who'd lost custody of her own children, and now helped others circumvent the system. That incident broke something in me. The constant fear, the perpetual vigilance, the way our parents' influence seemed to follow us everywhere. It was too much. That night, I told Rachel I wanted to fight back. Not just defend ourselves, but go on the offensive. Rachel was hesitant at first, worried about our safety and legal implications, but she saw the determination in both our eyes. Lily, despite her silence at school, was fierce at home. She wanted justice, not just for us, but for all the kids trapped in similar situations. We started documenting everything meticulously. Every incident, every strange car, every unexpected contact. We created backup copies, stored evidence in multiple locations. The investigator taught us about operational security, using VPNs, encrypted communications, being aware of our digital footprint. Working with our lawyer, we began building a civil case alongside the criminal one, not just against our parents, but against the enablers, the family members who'd participated in the harassment, the groups that had coached them, everyone who'd been complicit in extending our trauma. The work gave us purpose. Instead of just being victims, we were taking control of our narrative. Lily found her voice again through victim impact statements. I channeled my anger into research, uncovering similar cases and connecting with other survivors. We learned our parents had been model prisoners, using their good behavior to gain privileges they then exploited to continue their campaign against us. But our evidence was mounting. The investigator had traced financial transactions showing they'd paid for the harassment from their commissary accounts. 3 months into building our case, we received word that federal prosecutors were ready to file charges. The investigation had uncovered a broader conspiracy involving multiple families using similar tactics. Our case would be part of a larger prosecution, but our parents weren't finished. The night before the new charges were to be filed, our apartment building's fire alarm went off at 3 a.m. As we evacuated, following our practiced emergency plan, I noticed something odd. Only our floor's alarm was sounding. We stayed together, Rachel keeping us close as residents gathered outside. That's when I saw him, Uncle Marcus, standing across the street, watching. He wasn't trying to hide anymore. The look on his face was pure hatred. Rachel called the police immediately. This time, with all our documentation and the pending federal case, they took it seriously. Officers detained Marcus for questioning. A search of his car revealed surveillance equipment and detailed notes about our routines. The fire alarm had been a test, we learned later. He'd been trying to figure out our emergency procedures, looking for vulnerabilities. The federal prosecutors added his activities to their case, charging him with conspiracy and stalking. As news of the arrests spread, more victims came forward. Other families who'd been harassed by the same network. Other children whose parents had used these tactics to maintain control after losing custody. Our case had opened a floodgate. The preliminary hearings were intense. Our parents appeared via video link from prison, their faces showing shock as the extent of the charges became clear. The network they'd relied on was crumbling, with members turning on each other for plea deals. But even facing serious federal charges, they tried one more manipulation. Through their lawyer, they offered a deal. They'd plead guilty if we agreed to supervised visitation. They claimed they just wanted to repair our relationship, to be a family again. The audacity of it made me physically ill. After everything they'd put us through, they still believed they could manipulate us. Rachel held us as we cried that night, not from sadness, but from pure frustration at their refusal to acknowledge what they'd done. We refused the deal. Our lawyer made it clear, no contact, ever. The prosecutor supported us, moving forward with the full extent of charges. The network of harassers began fracturing as members realized the serious legal consequences they faced. During this time, something beautiful happened. The other survivors we'd connected with became a support system. We had video calls, sharing strategies, and encouragement. Lily began mentoring younger kids who'd escaped similar situations. I started writing about our experiences, finding healing and helping others understand the complexity of family abuse. The federal case moved faster than we'd expected. Within 6 months, plea deals were being struck. Uncle Marcus was the first to fold, agreeing to testify about the coordination in exchange for a lighter sentence. His testimony revealed the shocking extent of the conspiracy: encrypted chat rooms, detailed stalking manuals, even a fund to help parents hire harassers. Our parents held out longer, still maintaining their innocence. But as their co-conspirators testified one by one, their position became untenable. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded calls, financial transactions, documented harassment campaigns. The day they finally agreed to plead guilty was bittersweet. We sat in the prosecutor's office, watching via video link as they admitted to conspiracy, stalking, and witness intimidation. They were required to acknowledge the harm they'd caused, though their words felt hollow. Mom cried as she spoke, but I recognized the performance. She was crying for herself, for the consequences she faced, not for what she'd put us through. Dad's statement was worse, clinical, detached, as if reading from a script. Neither showed genuine remorse. remorse. Their sentences were substantial. Added to their existing time, they'd spend at least another decade in prison. More importantly, the plea agreement included a lifetime restraining order and prohibition from using third parties to contact us. The other conspirators received various sentences based on their involvement. Uncle Marcus got 3 years. The woman who'd impersonated a social worker got 18 months. The network leaders faced the harshest sentences, with some getting up to 7 years for running what the judge called a criminal enterprise designed to terrorize children. As we left the courthouse after the sentencing, I felt something shift. The constant weight of fear that had pressed on my chest for so long began to ease. We'd won. Not just the legal battle, but the fight for our freedom to exist without perpetual threat. But victory in court didn't mean instant healing. We still had work to do. Therapy continued, now focused on building our future, rather than just surviving our past. Rachel returned to work full-time, no longer needing to be our constant protector. I returned to regular school for my senior year. It was challenging, but I was determined to reclaim normalcy. Lily, now in her sophomore year, joined the art club and slowly began making friends. Her selective mutism faded as she felt safer. We stayed in our new city, but it no longer felt like hiding. It felt like home. Rachel decorated our apartment with photos of our new life, birthdays, small celebrations, ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because we were free to enjoy them. The survivor network we'd built during the case became a permanent part of our lives. We organized meetups, created resources for others escaping similar situations. What had started as shared trauma evolved into a community of healing and advocacy. I began applying to colleges, something that had felt impossible during the worst of the harassment. Lily threw herself into her art, processing her experiences through increasingly powerful pieces. Rachel started dating again, introducing us to Catherine, a fellow nurse who understood our journey and embraced our complicated family. There were still hard days. Triggers could come from unexpected places. A certain cologne, a tone of voice, a car that looked too familiar. But we had tools now, strategies that actually worked. We had each other, and we had a future that belonged to us. The money from the civil settlements, our parents' assets had been frozen and awarded to us, went into trust funds for our education and therapy. We donated a portion to organizations helping abuse survivors, wanting to give back to the community that had supported us. As my high school graduation approached, I reflected on how far we'd come. 3 years ago, I'd been trapped in a nightmare I couldn't even recognize as abuse. Now, I was heading to college to study social work, determined to help kids like Lily and me. Lily had been accepted into a prestigious arts program for the summer. Her portfolio, filled with pieces about survival and transformation, had impressed the judges. She was finding her voice through her art in ways that therapy alone couldn't achieve. Rachel had become more than our guardian. She was our chosen mother, the parent we'd needed all along. She'd sacrificed so much to keep us safe, never wavering in her belief that we deserved better. At my graduation, she cried happy tears as I walked across the stage. In my valedictorian speech, I talked about resilience, about the power of truth, about the importance of believing survivors. I saw Lily in the audience, no longer the shell of a girl who'd returned from boarding school, but a young woman who'd found her strength through unimaginable adversity. We'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of our childhood. Not a perfect life. Perfection was never the goal, but a real life, an honest life, a life where love meant safety and family meant choice. The future stretched before us, full of possibility. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments when the past tried to reclaim us, but we'd face the worst and survived. Whatever came next, we'd face it together, armed with the truth that had finally set us free. Our story had become bigger than just our survival. It had become a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of justice, and the unbreakable bond between sisters who refused to let abuse define their lives. We'd rewritten our narrative, and this time, we were the authors. The week after my graduation speech, everything changed. I was sorting through college brochures when Rachel burst through the door, her face pale. She'd received a call from the federal prosecutor. Our parents had filed an appeal. Their new lawyer claimed procedural errors, constitutional violations, anything to get them released early. My hand started shaking. Lily dropped her sketchbook, charcoal smearing across the floor. We'd thought it was over. We'd thought we were safe. The prosecutor assured Rachel the appeal had little merit, but hearings would start in 2 months. We'd need to testify again, relive everything in front of new judges who might be more sympathetic to our parents' manipulations. That night, none of us slept. I heard Lily pacing her room, Rachel making calls to our lawyer. By morning, we had a plan. We'd prepare like we were going to war, because that's what this was. The harassment started again within days. Not from our parents directly, they were still behind bars, but their new lawyer had connections. Private investigators started following us, taking photos, documenting our daily lives. They were building a case that we were thriving, that the alleged abuse couldn't have been that bad if we were doing so well. One investigator approached Lily outside her art class. He pretended to be interested in her work, asking about her inspiration. She recognized the tactic immediately and walked away, but he'd already taken photos of her paintings, the ones that showed her healing, that they'd twist to suggest she was fine all along. Rachel's relationship with Catherine became a target. The investigators photographed them together, later arguing in court documents that Rachel was distracted by her romantic life and couldn't properly care for us. They even suggested Catherine might be a negative influence, despite her being nothing but supportive. We had to change our routines again. No more regular coffee shop visits, no predictable schedules. The survivor support group meetings I'd been attending became impossible. We couldn't risk leading investigators to other vulnerable families. Then came the depositions. Our parents' lawyer, a woman named Patricia Keller who specialized in parental alienation cases, was ruthless. She questioned every detail of our testimony, suggested Rachel had coached us, implied we'd been motivated by money. During my deposition, she produced photos from my social media, me smiling at graduation, laughing with friends. "You don't look like someone who's been traumatized," she said. I wanted to scream that trauma doesn't photograph, that survivors don't wear their pain on their faces every moment. Lily's deposition was worse. Keller brought up her art, twisting her creative expression into evidence of attention-seeking behavior. She suggested Lily's selective mutism was manipulation, not trauma response. I watched my sister shrink into herself again, all her progress evaporating under the lawyer's attacks. Rachel faced accusations of ulterior motives. Keller painted her as the bitter sister-in-law who'd always resented our mother's success, who'd seized an opportunity to steal her children. The fact that Rachel had prepared a room for us before we'd even called the police became evidence of premeditation. Our lawyer fought back, but the damage was accumulating. The other survivors from our network couldn't testify. Their own safety depended on anonymity. The boarding school administrator who'd testified before had retired, moved away, become unreachable. 3 weeks before the appeal hearing, we got devastating news. Uncle Marcus had been released early for good behavior. The restraining order still applied, but we all knew how much protection that offered. He didn't approach us directly. Instead, he started showing up at Rachel's hospital, claiming to need medical care. Security escorted him out each time, but the message was clear. He knew where to find us. The intimidation escalated. Our car tires were slashed again, this time with a note: appeals have consequences. The security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned that night. Police took a report but said without footage, they couldn't prove Marcus was involved. Lily stopped eating. I found her one night with scissors, not to hurt herself, but cutting up her artwork, destroying evidence they might use against us. Rachel took time off work again, but the hospital administration was growing concerned about her repeated absences. We hired our own investigator, determined to fight back. What he found made my blood run cold. Our parents had been corresponding with other inmates, building a network of people willing to testify about their model behavior in prison. They'd been running a Bible study group, presenting themselves as reformed. Worse, they'd connected with a prisoners' rights organization that was funding their appeal. The organization believed our parents were victims of a corrupt system that tears families apart. They'd turned our story inside out, making us the villains. The investigator also discovered Patricia Keller's connection to the estranged parents network. She'd represented dozens of parents seeking to overturn custody decisions, abuse convictions. Her success rate was terrifying. 2 weeks before the hearing, Lily broke. She'd been holding everything inside, trying to be strong. But when she saw Marcus parked outside her school, just far enough to avoid violating the restraining order, something snapped. She ran, not home, but to the bridge overlooking the river. A teacher found her standing at the edge, not jumping, but staring down at the water. The school called Rachel, who called me. We found Lily in the counselor's office, completely shut down. The hospital wanted to admit her for observation. We knew how that would look in court. The troubled girl who'd made false accusations now showing mental instability. But her safety mattered more than optics. While Lily was hospitalized, I received a package at school. Inside was a flash drive containing hundreds of photos. Me and Lily from the past 3 years. At school, at home, with friends. Whoever sent it had been watching us for years. The message was clear. We were never truly free. Rachel was falling apart. Between work, the legal battle, and Lily's hospitalization, she was running on empty. Catherine tried to help, but the investigators used every moment she spent with us as ammunition. Then, a breakthrough. Chad's other victim, the other Sarah, had been following our case. She'd hired her own lawyer and filed a motion to intervene in the appeal. She had new evidence, recorded phone calls where Chad had admitted everything to her, thinking she'd never betray him. But our parents' lawyer was ready. She filed motions to exclude the recordings, claiming they were obtained illegally, that they were irrelevant to the appeal. The legal maneuvering was exhausting. One night, while visiting Lily in the hospital, I noticed a man in the parking lot watching us. Not Marcus, someone new. When I pointed him out to security, he produced credentials. He was a social worker, investigating whether Rachel was fit to maintain custody during Lily's mental health crisis. The timing wasn't coincidental. Our parents were using every angle, every system, every legal maneuver to destabilize our lives. If they couldn't get their convictions overturned, they'd settle for destroying what we'd built. Rachel hired another lawyer, specifically for the custody challenge. The bills were mounting. The settlement money was supposed to be for our education and therapy, but legal fees were draining it fast. Lily was released after a week, but she wasn't the same. The spark that had returned over the past 3 years was gone. She moved mechanically through her days, attending mandatory therapy sessions but not engaging. The appeal hearing was set for a Tuesday. The Friday before, our lawyer called with bad news. The judge assigned to the case was known for believing in family reconciliation, for thinking children could be coached to lie about abuse. He'd overturned several convictions similar to ours. We spent the weekend preparing. Rachel quizzed us on potential questions while Catherine made sure we ate, slept, took breaks. The other Sarah flew in to testify, staying at a hotel under an assumed name for safety. Monday night, I couldn't sleep. I found Rachel in the kitchen at 3 a.m. reviewing documents. Her hands were shaking. "What if we lose?" she whispered. It was the first time she'd voiced the fear we all carried. Tuesday morning came too fast. We dressed carefully. Conservative clothes that said respectable, but not trying too hard. The drive to the courthouse felt endless. Outside, protesters held signs. The prisoners' rights organization had mobilized supporters who believed our parents were victims of false accusations. They shouted as we passed, calling us liars, homewreckers, pawns of a broken system. Inside the courtroom, our parents sat with their legal team. They'd lost weight, aged visibly. Mom had perfected the grieving mother act, tissues clutched in her hand, shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. Dad sat rigid, the picture of wronged dignity. Patricia Keller's opening statement was masterful. She painted a picture of loving parents driven to desperate measures by a system that believed children's fantasies over adult truth. She suggested we'd been manipulated by Rachel, by therapists eager to find abuse where none existed. Our lawyer countered with facts, the evidence, the testimonies, the pattern of abuse. But facts felt weak against Keller's emotional manipulation. I testified first. Keller attacked every word, every memory. She suggested I'd confused normal parental discipline with abuse, that teenage rebellion had twisted my perceptions. When I described specific incidents, she had explanations for everything. The judge seemed sympathetic to her arguments. He asked why we'd waited so long to report, why we hadn't told teachers or friends. The questions felt like accusations. Lily testified via video link. The courthouse was too triggering after her breakdown. Keller portrayed this as evidence of instability, suggesting Lily couldn't face her parents because she knew she'd lied. When the other Sarah testified, Keller was ready. She dug up Sarah's history, a shoplifting charge as a teenager, therapy for depression. She painted Sarah as troubled, suggested she'd projected her own issues onto Chad. The recordings were played despite Keller's objections. Chad's voice filled the courtroom, admitting to everything. But Keller argued they were taken out of context, that Chad had been trying to placate an unstable ex-girlfriend. Rachel testified last. Keller's attack was vicious. She brought up Rachel's estrangement from our mother before any of this happened, suggested jealousy, implied Rachel had always wanted children and saw an opportunity. The judge deliberated for 3 hours. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. He spoke about the complexity of family dynamics, the difficulty of determining truth years after alleged events. Then he delivered his decision. The convictions would stand, but with modifications. Our parents' sentences would be reduced by half. They'd be eligible for supervised release in 2 years instead of a decade. The courtroom erupted. Our parents' supporters cheered while we sat frozen. 2 years. Just 2 more years before they could apply for supervised release, before the nightmare could begin again. Outside the courthouse, Keller spoke to the media about the partial victory, how it proved the original sentences were excessive. She hinted at future legal action, civil suits for defamation and emotional distress. The drive home was silent. Lily stared out the window. Rachel gripped the steering wheel. I felt numb. We'd won, technically, but it felt like a defeat. Back at the apartment, we found Marcus's car parked outside. He wasn't in it, but the message was clear. He was watching, waiting. 2 years would pass quickly. That night, we held a family meeting. Rachel presented options. We could move again, further this time. Maybe change our names completely. immediately, start over where no one could find us, or we could stay and fight, knowing what was coming. Lily spoke for the first time in days. Her voice was quiet but firm. I'm tired of running. She looked at each of us. They've taken enough. No more. We spent the next weeks rebuilding our security plan. New cameras, new locks, new protocols. We connected with other survivors who'd faced similar situations, learned from their strategies. I deferred college for a semester. It felt like giving up, but we needed to regroup. Lily returned to her art with new intensity, creating pieces that were darker but more powerful. Rachel and Catherine grew closer. Catherine moving in partly for love, partly for security. The investigators stopped following us after the hearing, but we knew they'd be back. Patricia Keller sent a letter suggesting our parents wanted to heal the family through mediation. We didn't respond. 3 months after the hearing, something shifted. The other survivors we'd connected with proposed something new, a formal organization, legal support for families like ours. Not just emotional support, but resources to fight back against systematic harassment. We threw ourselves into building it. Lily designed the logo. I wrote grant proposals. Rachel used her medical connections to find pro bono psychological experts. The work gave us purpose beyond survival. 6 months later, we held our first conference. 50 families attended, sharing strategies and resources. Legal experts volunteered their time, teaching us about our rights, how to document harassment, how to fight back within the system. Our parents tried to infiltrate the organization through proxies. We caught 3 different people attempting to gather information for them, but we were learning, getting better at protecting ourselves and others. A year after the appeal, we received notice that our parents had applied for early supervised release. The paperwork claimed they'd completed every rehabilitation program, that they had housing and employment lined up, that they posed no threat. This time, we were ready. Our lawyer filed opposing documentation, the harassment during the appeal, the network they'd built, the continued attempts to contact us through third parties. Other survivors from our organization submitted statements about similar patterns in their cases. The hearing was scheduled for next month, but this time felt different. We weren't alone anymore. We had resources, support, strategies. We had each other, stronger for having survived their last attempt to break us. Last week, Lily sold her first piece to a gallery, a powerful depiction of survival that spoke to countless others who'd lived similar stories. I started college, studying pre-law now instead of social work. Rachel received a promotion at the hospital, her dedication finally recognized. We still check locks obsessively, still vary our routes, still jump at unexpected sounds. The fear hasn't gone away. It's evolved, become part of our operating system. But so has our strength. Tomorrow marks exactly 2 years since the appeal hearing. Our parents' supervised release hearing is in 3 weeks. Marcus still drives by occasionally, careful to stay legal. The battle isn't over. But tonight, we're cooking dinner together. Catherine's making her famous pasta while Lily sketches at the kitchen table. Rachel's reviewing legal documents, but she's humming, something she only started doing recently. I'm writing this update, thinking about how far we've come. We know what's coming. We know they'll never stop trying to regain control. But we also know we'll never again be those vulnerable girls who couldn't name what was happening to us. We have truth, we have each other, and we have an army of survivors who refuse to be silenced. The war continues, but we're winning more battles, and that has to be enough for now.